Good morning. Welcome to the December 3rd, 2021 State Board of Education meeting. Board members, please engage your microphones before speaking and turn them off when you are done speaking. Please note that board members may be using their cell phones and laptop computers to access the agenda and information related to this meeting. Live web streaming is available through the State Board of Education website, www.education.ne.gov/stateboard. Agenda item 1, call to order. The December 3rd, 2021 State Board meeting will now come to order. Agenda item 1.1, roll call. Andrea, please call the roll.
Patsy Kojans.
Here.
Lisa Fricke.
Here.
Patty Goobles.
Here.
Jacqueline Morrison.
Here.
Maureen Nichols.
Here.
Robin Stevens.
Here.
Deborah Neary.
Here.
Commissioner Bloomstead.
Here.
7 present, 1 vacant.
Quorum. Thank you, Andrea. Please rise, everyone, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Agenda item 1.3. Information regarding the Open Meetings Act is posted as you enter the room from the main entrance doors. The Open Meetings Act is also posted on the State Board of Education's website, www.education.ne.gov/stateboard. Agenda item 1.4, COVID-19 meeting protocol. Commissioner?
Yeah, and so as traditional over the last few months, just that we have this posted within Spark, what our protocols are, and just ask that people kind of respect one another's needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Agenda item 2. We will now have public comment period. This period of public comment is available for any person who wishes to address the State Board on subjects within its authority. Please note that public comment should be on topics related to the State Board's constitutional and statutory authority. Thanks to the members of the public who attended today. Agenda item 2.1. Those wishing to speak must be signed in at the table outside of the meeting room. We have, is it 24?
I think 22.
22 public comment cards submitted at this time. The board voted yesterday to limit public comment to end by 4:00 p.m., where each person may address the board for up to 2 minutes. The board may take a 45-minute lunch break announced at a time prior to recessing. As provided under Section 84-1412, Part 3, the board waives and does not require that persons that address the board in public comment provide their physical address. The board does, however, request that you please state what town you are from. I will announce the names of the next 16 speakers so they are prepared to come forward. Please sit in the designated chairs at the front of the room. Agenda. Aaron Hess. Michael Conley, Bradley Reinke, Elizabeth Tegmeyer, Kelly Brady, Stephanie Johnson, Wayne Smith, Judy Durr, Jenna Durr, Kathy Adams, Rhonda Boers, Jennifer Hicks, Sherry Jones, Mary Hamilton, Dallas Asher, Liz Davids, Aaron Hess. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you, Board, for your service to the state of Nebraska in this position. My name is Aaron Hess. I'm from here in Lincoln, Lancaster County. I've been a chaplain here in the city of Lincoln now for the last 6 months, chaplain to the legislature. I've served in Nebraska for 41 years as a pastor in Norfolk, Nebraska. I remember a lady over here who was my professor at Wayne State College, or at Northeast Community College, and so greetings to you, Patty. I have been an educator, been involved with Christian education and with public education for 40 plus years. I've served on a national board representing education, and I've also served actually Lincoln Public Schools, most recently as a school bus driver. Enjoyed that. Again, I do want to thank you for your service to the state. Very important work that we have here in Nebraska, the education of our children. Our classrooms, I believe, should not be, though, a social experiment. I am here to express my opposition to the sex education guidelines and the critical theory that is being espoused and taught in our public schools. It's not a forum for espousing these non-beneficial teachings. Our children don't need to be confused about their identity, for in the Lord they are fearfully and wonderfully made. COVID has brought further involvement of parents. They do know what is best for their children. Would you pray with me? Father, we are so thankful that you have given us the privilege to present today and to share with these. May you, Lord, be glorified. May each one speak in kindness, but with conviction. And may you, Lord, be honored. We pray in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Michael Conley.
I'm an old Marine Corps sergeant. I worked for the Japanese Ministry of Education years ago. I was an educational director for a couple of decades as well. I returned back to the United States and I was surprised at the educational levels here in Nebraska. They weren't the same as when I left. I was recently speaking up in Rushville, Nebraska. It had a population of 999 people. There were 108 people attending. I spoke after Congressman Adrian Smith. I am one of the candidates for governor next year. We have a group called Voices of Nebraska. It is a group of individuals that is dedicated to changing big problems here in Nebraska. We have several initiatives that we are pushing to get on the November 2022 ballot. The most popular one, by far, the one that got 100% approval up in Rushville, was the replacement of the Department of Education with a very small and efficient Office of Education. This initiative has now gained national attention. Expect to see it on the ballot. This department, probably by January 2023, will cease to exist. Education will return to the local level under parental control. VoicesofNebraska.com. That's all I have to say.
Maureen.
Thank you, Michael.
Maureen. I don't think the gentleman stated where he was from. I just want to make sure that we're consistent with everyone.
Thank you, John.
Palmyra, Nebraska.
Thank you. Bradley Reinke.
I am Brad Reinke from here in Lincoln, Nebraska, for about 2.5 years now. I am opposed to the health education and critical race theory, and I just want to share something from a recent reading that I did, and that is I am now an old father of 11 children, 16 grandchildren, and I pray that I have a little bit of wisdom from my gray hair. Thank you, State Board of Education, for allowing me to speak to you. The Nebraska State Board of Education carries the weight of influence and responsibility to children, to parents, to taxpayers, and to God, our Creator. I see a relationship between your influence on minor students through various schools and teachers and the charges brought against Miss Maxwell in a case that is now in trial. This is from the United States Department of Justice, from the Southern District of New York, and it's dated Thursday, July 2nd, 2020. And I'm going to be reading from paragraphs 2, 3, and 4, and quoting. Acting U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss said, as alleged, Ghislaine, I think I'm saying that right, Maxwell, facilitated, aided, and participated in acts of sexual abuse of minors. Maxwell enticed minor girls, got them to trust her, and then delivered them into a trap that she and Jeffrey Epstein had set.
Time. Thank you, Bradley. Time.
Sorry?
Elizabeth Tegmeyer. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Tegmeyer. I'm from North Platte. First, I want to thank the board for continuing to hear public comment during the monthly meetings. I believe that it's essential to continue to listen to your constituents in order to accurately represent them on boards such as this one. And so I appreciate the opportunity that we have to share our concerns with you today. So for the better part of this year, we as a state have been slogging through the controversial issue of the proposed health standards. While the majority of the public appreciate the tabling of these standards, many here today will continue to voice their concern over the activism that motivated the design of the Human Growth and Development section. This activism was made clear through articles published in the Omaha World Herald and other newspapers. Concerns remain as the board's rationale for tabling these standards was not because 90% of the feedback objected to the adoption of the standards, but rather COVID was given as the reason to the public. These standards should not merely be tabled but scrapped. They are unnecessary since every district in the state does teach health and teaches human sexuality based on the individual community standards held within each school district. They should be also scrapped because the state legislature has voted against the inclusion of comprehensive sex ed and never required our board here to initiate this lengthy and time-consuming task. During the November board meeting, you wondered why the process for introducing the standards did not work when it's worked for other subject areas, and I would have to disagree. The process did work. Standards were proposed and the public resoundingly rejected them. To better understand the situation, board members do not need to look inward and attempt to analyze what could have been done differently that would have created more public
Time.
acceptance.
Thank you. Thank you. Kelly Brady.
Hello, Kelly Brady, Bellevue. Why am I here again? Because I will not give up. I will not surrender my children, my grandchildren, or any children to your board's sick and twisted idea of education. You have been caught red-handed, lying, colluding, conspiring, and derelict of your duties. The board and the commissioner have shown the citizens of Nebraska that we must unite to stop your corruption. We must stop this unbelievable waste of money. Our children deserve better. We have all asked and demanded all of your resignations. I am holding here the initiative to replace the department board. We will win. We will demolish this board and start a new, better, accountable Office of Education. The citizens have asked again that you resign, and you've done nothing. You've done nothing to better our schools. Our grades are terrible. You've spent our money 3 different times on this sex education when everybody has told you not to. You do not deserve the right to rule over our children. You need to be gone. And this is going to make sure that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Stephanie Johnson. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi. Stephanie Johnson, and I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska. So I, too, have had a history of teaching. I was a speech pathologist in Lincoln for 17 years. We've raised 6 kids here and I'm also a grandma now. So here I am again, and just, I didn't even know what to say because I feel like everything has been said so many times. And last night I couldn't sleep just thinking about the job that you guys have and what you have to struggle with or what you think about after you hear these testimonies. And for whatever reason, you are our board, and there's a work being done in you. And I don't know what that is or who you're listening to, but we have had to coalesce, us moms and dads and grandparents and teachers, we've had to coalesce where we have what you have behind you. You've had SECUS, Planned Parenthood, Advocates for Youth, Omaha Women's Fund, Answer. Even the current administration in the White House has named people like me, so they've used the media to claim that I'm a domestic terrorist. And we're like David going up against Goliath. And that's what it feels like. Yes, we've had to come together like kids on a playground who all of a sudden were being told all the rules and how to play the game. We've had to hold hands and stop it from coming at us. You even have the backing of the United Nations. Here we are coming up against you month after month after month, just saying, leave us alone. You have the ability to stop this. You have the ability. You've had the ability all along. Nobody asked for this. Parents don't want this. I don't know why, and I want you to search your heart for why you keep trying to make a circle peg fit in a square hole.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay?
I have Wayne Smith next. Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Wayne Smith. I'm from Lincoln. I just have a couple questions. Why was an ad hoc committee created to work on process development for future health sex education standards? You didn't get much support for the first two versions. Please stop the process now. It is a waste of time and money. The public does not trust you to develop these needless standards. Second question, why are equity and anti-racism resources being promoted by the Department of Education? Anti-racism is nothing more than communist, Marxist, critical race theory. Equity is nothing more than equal outcomes. Again, Marxist thought. This is not what I want you to promote. You cannot be trusted to guide the education system in Nebraska. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Judy Durr. Welcome, Judy.
Good morning, Judy Durr, Amherst, Nebraska. I am reading for an anonymous concerned citizen who's involved in the Nebraska public school system. How is it possible that we have reached this point? The Nebraska State Board of Education is indeed a board of directors, a board that is charged with providing oversight of the commissioner and the NDE. The commissioner and the NDE are tasked with providing oversight over our public schools so they do not wander astray. Under this umbrella, they provide a litany of standards and requirements that schools must meet so they can be accredited. With this in mind, we elect state board members who have a fiduciary duty to make sure all parties stay in their lanes. And yet, we have school districts in this state that do not have a curriculum. We have school districts in this state scoring in the 28th percentile in high school math. We have school districts in this state that are not filing a plan of improvement, and yet they are not being held to account, they are not under probation, and they are fully accredited. How is this possible? Does this board not have the fiduciary responsibility to the electorate to make sure that all schools have a curriculum, that all schools file and follow through with their plans of improvement, that all schools are held to account for poor performance, and ultimately, is it not the fiduciary responsibility of this board to make sure the NDE is in fact auditing all of its charges? Should we not learn to crawl before we walk? Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Jenna Durr. Good morning, Jenna.
Good morning. My name is Jenna Durr, and I'm from Kearney, and today I'm speaking on behalf of the Protect Nebraska Children Coalition. It's now December, and we have officially been attending these board meetings since May, and we have consistently been clear the proposed health sex education standards from drafts 1 and 2 were medically inaccurate, not science-based, and ultimately unnecessary. We also know the process to develop these standards was manipulated from the very beginning, built upon deceit and lies. We also know an ad hoc committee has been formed in order to look at the process for developing health sex education standards once again. This decision is incredibly tone deaf and out of touch with reality. And today we are still waiting. We are still waiting and watching this state school board. There is still a crisis of confidence. The crisis of confidence exists because state school board members, the commissioner, and NDE staff repeatedly pleaded ignorance, misled the public, and helped spread misinformation for months. We are not fooled, and we are not going away. There has been no apology for the manipulations and lies from the State Board of Education members, the commissioner, or the NDE staff. There has been no apology for the way in which concerned citizens have been mocked, made fun of, or accused of being part of conspiracies. We have heard repeatedly that parents are important, but we haven't seen any evidence of this. No one has even acknowledged what happened, even though we have the source documents from many of you and have clearly laid out this information. We still don't trust any of you. Moving forward, we will continue to show up, speak, and stay engaged. We are committed to electing state and local school board members who will be accountable, who will demonstrate the highest level of integrity and honesty, and who will be willing to build bridges with we the people. We will elect those who are willing to stand in the gap against the social indoctrination of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. Kathy Adams. Kathy. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you. I am Kathy Adams, and I am from Kearney, Nebraska. I have questions for you again this month, and I feel we all deserve to have answers to those questions from each one of you. Number one, can each one of you explain why you personally believe students need to learn all about gender identities? Number two, what does gender identity have to do with health education in regards to human growth and development? Number three, why are you so bent on even writing the health standards when you are not mandated to do so? Number four, are you aware of all the YouTubers known as influencers that are telling kids just how to work the system to get what they think they want, including leaving their parents by emancipation? Have you ever listened to Jake Edwards, Ty Turner, Chase Ross, Elliot James? These are influencers to these children, to name a few. How about Caitlyn Jenner? Did you know that Caitlyn Jenner is against CSE and forcing this on children? For those of you that say you are a Christian, and Robin, you, for one, proudly stated that last month when a person called you out on it, do you think our Lord and Savior is going to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant," when your actions and decisions hurt innocent children and break apart families in the name of tolerance and equity? We cannot serve two masters. You are either serving God or you are serving the father of lies, something you all need to think long and hard on. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Rhonda Boers. Good morning, Rhonda.
Good morning, people. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I'm really short. I'm going to move this down just a little bit. Again, thank you for allowing me to speak this morning. I am a teacher. I've been a teacher for over 30 years. Times have changed, and it really scares me. I am a teacher, but most importantly, I am a Christian. I have been taught to love one another regardless of skin color. I have done that with each and every one of my classes and my children in my classes. I have had every ethnic group that you can possibly conceive, and I've loved them all equally. My point being here today is that I'm against CRT. It does nothing but divide people. The books that I have been reading, here is a sample of one. This is just one. Not my idea. It talks about white supremacy, whiteness. It talks about cops being bad, and all they do is shoot bad or shoot black people. Police officers are to be respected. I have been a teacher, like I said, for years and years and years. I taught my kids that police officers are to be respected. They're not to be afraid of them. It also shows, I want to show you the very last page of this book. I find it despicable and basically a lie. Here, whiteness is a bad deal. It always was. Dude, we can see your pointy tail. It is depicting white
Time.
people as the
Thank
devil.
you, Rhonda. Rhonda, where are you from?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ashland.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Hicks. Jennifer Hicks. Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning. My name's Jennifer Hicks, and I live in Peru, Nebraska. And I'm here because I've watched, this is not the first meeting that I've attended. I've watched parents come and speak to the board members, and I've seen a lot of condescension from the board members. And I have a huge concern that our people, we don't have representation in our government, whether it's on any elected position, paid or not. We don't have representation. We have parents come and speak to you, and they're not being heard. And what I want those parents to know is that we do have this initiative to replace the Nebraska Department of Education, the school board, that would be you, and also the school commissioner, and replace it with a smaller Office of Education. And I want to correct some of the misconceptions that have been reported in the news. This is an office which is accountable to both the governor and the unicameral. So there is oversight. This initiative would provide oversight of our educational system that we don't currently have. Governor Ricketts had to go on tour and to encourage parents to come and speak to you, to basically beg you to do the right thing, because we didn't have a system of oversight in place. This initiative gives a system of oversight that we don't have. And I'm sorry, it means that you would lose your positions, you would be gone, and good riddance, honestly, because you're not serving the people well, you're not serving children well. And so I would encourage people to sign this initiative and to send you packing. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Jones.
I'm Sherry Jones from Grand Island and a candidate for State Board of Education District 6. Because the proposed health standards have been tabled rather than scrapped, I believe there is a continued need for Nebraskans to remain vigilant and vocal. As the State Board of Education, you have spent an inordinate amount of time and energy on these unmandated standards. If local school districts want health standards, they can choose to develop their own, which many have already done. Since March, you've received input via emails, phone calls, letters, and in-person comments at your monthly meetings. If I understand correctly, 90% of the input you've received has been in opposition to these proposed standards. My question to each of you is, why in the world won't you let these standards, quote, die the death they deserve, unquote? I believe it is time to give your attention to other matters, such as improving the academic performance of our students. There will always be work to do in that area. Addressing the teacher shortage, finding ways to recruit quality individuals to the teaching profession, and once hired, how to retain them. And perhaps encouraging schools to do what they can to develop patriotism in the hearts of our students, a love for this great country. In closing, I urge you to let these standards go. Move on. Your constituents have spoken. Please listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Mary Hamilton? Good morning, Mary.
Good morning. My name is Mary Hamilton, and I live in Lincoln, and I'm a mother, a grandmother, and a certified teacher in the state of Nebraska. I put off speaking to you for a very long time because I don't like confrontation, but I feel I must speak out. I love teaching, and it breaks my heart to see what is happening in our schools. Sorry. So I feel I no longer can teach in the public schools. There is too much push for this radical agenda that does not fit into my personal faith and my principles. I do not need to get into details about the health standards, that they are indecent, and the absurdity of pushing the critical race theory into hatred groups of people because of their skin color, and teaching our kids that identity is in groupthink. They actually have been teaching this stuff for a long time. One example is a book in the Lincoln Public Schools library called Not My Idea, and that was the same book that that other lady had. Among the pictures featured in the book is a whiteness contract depicted as a devil. It even has a pointy tail. If you sign the contract, you get to take other people's money, land, and mess endlessly with the lives of all humans of color for the purpose of profits. And further illustrating the point of how capitalism is evil, a $20 bill makes up the devil's body. This book could have been written by the Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, who frequently rants against white devils. Our children need to be taught love for all. I have some suggestions, because I don't like to criticize without giving some suggestions. So my suggestion would be to get some of these books into our libraries. Why America Matters by Dr. Ben Carson. Amen. We the Kids, the Preamble to the Constitution by David Catrow. George Washington and the General's Dog by Frank Murphy. The Scrambled States of America by Lori Keller, and that is a really good book. I love that one. How to Bake an American Pie by Karma Wilson. Train of States by Peter Siss.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Dallas Asher. Dallas Asher. Welcome, Dallas.
Thank you. My name is Dallas Asher, and I'm from Omaha. As parents and grandparents of Nebraska children, we were taken aback at the very first State Board of Education meeting by the deceit that was present regarding the authorship and the proposed health standards. What agenda have you been following from other far-left organizations to teach CRT, CSE, equity, and anti-racism? Even in our schools' libraries, there are materials that could be considered pornographic if viewed on the streets. Who put these in the schools? You knew this was coming. Look at the states that are fighting CRT, CSE. It just did not happen. You have had an agenda. Morals and truth seem to be lacking from within this body. Even now, if you get federal COVID money, how can we trust you to spend it? You need to be accountable to either the governor or to the unicameral. Several weeks ago, there was a news report on Channel 3 TV in Omaha. The article is about some of the problems the State Board of Education was having with comments from the public. Some of us were called out as extremists. The person or persons who put this report together needs to apologize to those of us who spoke. We were only exercising our exercise of the First Amendment rights, and that includes me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dallas.
Maureen, I have a question. Maureen. I have a question. Can I ask your question? Sir?
Dallas, we need you back at the microphone. We have a question for you, clarification.
You mentioned an article recently where we, as the board, referred to someone as terrorist. Can you tell me which article that you're referring to or that you're talking about?
That was on Channel 3 TV in Omaha.
Was it an article? Was it a...
It was a newscast.
Did they mention who?
They did.
Can you tell me what you're referring to?
And you can find that out by watching that on...
Yes, I would like to. That's why I want to know where to find this. What are we referring to? If you don't mind telling me.
Well, it was on Channel 3 TV.
Do you know what day?
Pardon?
Do you know what day?
I don't have that with me now.
Okay, thank you.
August 6th, 2021, Jacqueline Morrison.
Liz Davids.
Did you get that down? Does everyone have the papers that I turned in?
Yes,
Okay, wonderful.
they'll be distributed afterwards.
Oh, afterwards, okay. Liz Davids from Lincoln. I have brought the book and I photocopied each of you a copy of the title page of Not My Idea. The subtitle is A Book About Whiteness. And I don't know about you, but I've never heard of whiteness until the past few years. I certainly would never have seen a book called A Book About Whiteness. When I was a child, we were taught about color blindness and that we needed to think about people's character as opposed to what they look like. Last month, Jacqueline Morrison and a few of us had a great conversation about the perception of CRT, and she asked about that during the meeting, and so I thought I would bring what the results of CRT are going to look like for our children. So first of all, the cover has an American flag and a scared child and a burning cross, which is a nice touch. A book about whiteness. In the packet that I thought would be given to all of you as I was reading, you'll find the whiteness contract. Again, the whiteness is described as the devil. This is a result of critical race theory filtering down into children's books. These are in the Lincoln Public Schools libraries, and I'm sure public school libraries across the state. This is recommended for kindergartners through 3rd grade because it's a picture book. And the idea is that children have visceral emotional reactions to this book. I showed it to my own students. I'm an educator myself, and they were horrified that they would be told that whiteness is a bad deal. What does that even mean to a student that's white, to a student that's black, to a student that's brown? I would never want to see a book in any of our libraries that is a book about blackness or brownness or redness or yellowness or whiteness. So we've spent a lot of time this year talking about sex ed standards. I would like to know what are our literary standards and expectations for our libraries across this state. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. The next group is Alyssa Martin, Deb Miller, Julie Sheldon, Laura Rauscher, Mark Monkowitz, Amber Parker, Deb Fishbeck. Alyssa? Welcome, Alyssa.
Good morning. My name is Alyssa Martin. I'm from Lexington, and I didn't come today with prepared remarks because I've said a lot to you guys over the last few months, and I really couldn't think of anything new to say, and I didn't see the point in just sitting here and repeating it all to you. But this morning, as I was sitting here listening to everyone, I was thinking, you know what? There's a lot of us here. There's a lot of us still coming because we care about our kids and we care about what they're being exposed to. And I know that when we had lots of people for public comment, that there were people on the other side pushing the health standards. And I'm noticing that they're not still coming. And I don't know if that's because they think that they're safe and because you've just tabled the standards and they're going to come back sometime, that they don't have to worry about it. They don't have to voice their opinions anymore. Or maybe it's just because there's an agenda that's being pushed and it's not really about kids. It was just about, this is the way that we can promote our agenda. And so that hit me this morning as I was sitting there listening to everyone else. The other thing I wanted to just touch on quickly is this idea of equity, and that somehow we're going to be able to create, if we give everybody exactly the same thing and we give equal treatment to everyone, not against equal treatment at all, but let me give you an example. When we give equal treatment to everyone, that doesn't guarantee equal outcomes. So I have 4 kids, and they're 4 entirely different people. And I could treat them each the same. I could give them each exactly the same thing, but it's not what each of them needs. And so I think our thing with education is that we're trying to make it a one-size-fits-all, and education is never going to be one-size-fits-all because it's individual kids and it's individual teachers. And I think we have to be careful of putting these labels on things.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Deb Miller. Deb Miller.
Good
Welcome,
morning.
Deb.
Thank you for letting us speak. I just want to say that as a Lincoln resident, I worked at the Lincoln Public Schools back in the 70s as a para. I know what challenges teachers face, but the most important thing is the betterment of the children. And you've heard time after time after time what these people are saying. Most of these people are parents, grandparents, and we just want to speak to your hearts because we love the kids that are involved in our schools, and you obviously have a care for children too, or you wouldn't be here. So I want to say this to you. For this reason, since the day we heard about you, we have not stopped praying for you and asking God to fill you with the knowledge of His will on how to take care of the children. And we pray this in order that you may live a life worthy and do worthy decisions in behalf of our children, and in every way bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God. It is my heart's cry that each and every one of you understand what the Lord wants for these kids. And in order to know that and to do that, it is important that you accept Jesus Christ into your heart as your Savior and follow the Word of God, because the time is ticking and I don't want to see any of you perish. So I pray that the Lord will open your eyes and your hearts to what is the best and wonderful things that you can do for these children.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Julie Sheldon. Welcome, Julie.
My name is Julie Sheldon. I'm from here in Lincoln. I wasn't going to talk about this today as it was very upsetting to me, but we've heard a lot about the Not My Idea, a book about whiteness. I was able to read this to the Lincoln Public School Board and followed their policy and procedures on how to get this book removed, filled out the form, had the meeting with the committee that they got together, and then just received the result from this. And this is from Matt Larson. He is the Associate Superintendent for Instruction for LPS. Basically, you've heard some of the bad things in this book, and I know I've talked to at least one of you about this book, and the lack of context with a lot of these things. You know, the what is whiteness and the white privilege and the contract and these things. This book never has a definition of white, what whiteness is. I know people, or have seen people in my line of work that identify as white from all over the world. And to be completely honest, I can't imagine that someone living in Egypt that considers themselves white would have the same experience as I do in Lincoln, Nebraska as a white person. Therefore, it's very, 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 I think, wrong to use words like white privilege and whiteness. Some of the reasons this book was allowed to stay is that it offers a perspective on the concept of white privilege. It doesn't explain what it is, though. The book could be beneficial to students and caregivers who wish to discuss race and discrimination. The book addresses historical injustices. This book is not anti-white, rather it challenges one to consider how race impacts society. The book's portrayal of police officers is not compelling enough to remove the book. A conclusion supported by both the active and retired police officers on the committee.
Time. Thank you, Julie. Laura Rauscher. Laura. Mm-hmm. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm here as a mother and a grandmother, and it hurts my heart to have to come before you yet again. You have truly been chosen for such a time as this, when the war is raging so greatly over our children. You're privileged. You're privileged. You are at the focus right now of holding back the enemy, the all the evil that wants to come against our kids, to steal their innocence. Please stand firm, stand strong. I don't know how you do it. So I just wanted to say this out of Galatians 1:3. Grace and peace to you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ, who gave himself for our sins to rescue us from the present evil age, according to the will of God and Father, to whom be the glory forever. It only took 6 chapters in Genesis before the wickedness was so great on earth that God saw the wickedness of men. And that's why Noah had to build the ark over 100-year time, and the flood came and wiped out the whole world. This is evil. This is bad. We were never taught things like this. Martin Luther King himself judged people by character of heart, not by color of skin. I was never taught to look at life through color. Please scrap CRT. Please scrap the sex standards. It's awful. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Mark Bonkowitz. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. I'm Mark Bonkowitz from Omaha, Nebraska. I'm a member of NFFE, Nebraskans for Founders Values, and we are our members of the guardians of the First Amendment rights, Second Amendment, and traditional parents' fundamental rights in all 93 Nebraska counties. Our organization belongs to a nationwide coalition called the Protect Child Health Coalition. We have members virtually across the entire United States, and especially those in Oregon, Washington, and California have really suffered immensely from sex ed standards very similar to what you are trying to bring to the state of Nebraska. Since the last meeting that you held here, I've delivered 4 workshops across the state. Grant out in the southwest corner, Holdridge in the center of the state, O'Neill on the northern border, and was in Ponca last night. I share files when I go. I show them it's perfectly normal because this is what they're using in Washington, Oregon, California. This is what your standards, if they were passed, would allow to be taught. I also show them the draft 1 standards that you created that were delivered in March. And I can tell you I've yet to find the first person say, these are fine. Instead, I find hundreds and hundreds of people who are irate and upset because of what you have created as draft 1 and minimized a little bit as part as draft 2. So I just want you to know that we can save you the time of your internal investigation. Just scrap the standards, okay? Deborah Neary, resign. Matt, you should resign. On your watch, this happened. You should be ashamed of this happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Amber Parker. Amber Parker.
Oh, I thought that was before me. I'm 22. Are you speaking? Are you 21? Yeah. Are you speaking? Because I'm 22. I am. Okay, then you go ahead, because I'm 22, and that would be out of protocol. Following
Your
the
last?
rules.
You're number 23.
23. You're 22. I'm 22 and she's 23 then?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure to respect that governing authority
I appreciate
of what
that.
it is. So may my time please start now. My name is Amber Parker, A-M-B-E-R, Parker, P-A-R-K-E-R. I'm here to say that we are going to take the power away from you because it never belonged to you in the first place. There was a level of trust that was given to you, and you totally betrayed us. I want to speak, Lisa Fricke. We had a conversation and you shared your heart. As you shared your heart, the thing is, you have been on this board. These are pedophile grooming standards you're placing. It's interesting, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. How many Ghislaine Maxwells and Jeffrey Epsteins do you want to raise up in a generation? Because comprehensive sex education would do that. I want to go to facts. Lisa Schultz, the Nebraska Department of Education, invited to the table to set up the foundation of Nebraska standards. Lisa Schultz is a Planned Parent operative. Lisa Schultz was 15 years. She worked at Planned Parenthood of the Heartland, and she's currently on the board of Planned Parenthood. This is who the Nebraska Department of Education invited. Furthermore, there was a legislative bill introduced. And they wanted to remove the language that protected the Nebraska schools from abortion clinics and abortions not happening in the schools. Now you tell me why did you invite Lisa Schultz from Women's Fund of Omaha? SECUS and comprehensive sex education is in Women's Fund, and it's not just Lisa Schultz. You all need to resign, and state senators, it's time to do your job. Impeach this whole board. There's been enough time to speak. This is serious. We don't want a generation of Ghislaine Maxwell's and Jeffrey Epstein's. You are grooming these children to molest other children and increase in sex trafficking and human trafficking.
Time.
Not on our watch.
Thank you, Amber.
It's done.
Amber, where are you from? Amber, can you tell us your location, please?
I deny your request because the verbiage that you gave is you request. You do not have power to bully us in that. I deny your request. Thank you. Their request was to tell where your location and where you live.
What town?
I live in the state of Nebraska. I deny your request.
That's
Thank
the state
you.
law that we're quoting. That's
No, actually, in the state law, there's an exemption, and it's pertaining to safety. So if you want to be accountable to my family and my safety, then put yourself on record here to do so, because I'm not giving you where I'm at. Thank you.
Brian? Pardon? Okay. We'll move on. Deb Fishback?
Good morning. Hi, Deborah. Hi, Jacqueline. I appreciate you from last time when we had a chance to have a conversation. I really see you as people that have hearts, that want to do the right thing. You've had kids, been related to kids, and have been through life and have understanding, and you know that this is different than when we were kids. Something kept on coming to me this last week, and it was a song that kept on playing over and over in my car. And I just thought if I can keep it from making a lump in my throat, I would like to read the lyrics to you. It's called The Slow Fade. Be careful, little eyes, what you see. It's a second glance that ties your hands as darkness pulls the strings. Be careful, little feet, where you go, for it's the little feet behind you that are sure to follow. It's a slow fade when you give yourself away. It's a slow fade when black and white have turned to gray and the thoughts invade. Choices are made. It's a price will be paid when you give yourself away. People never crumble in a day. It's a slow fade. Be careful, little ears, what you hear when flattery leads to compromise. The end is always near. Be careful, little lips, what you say, for empty words and promises lead broken hearts astray. It's a slow fade when you give yourself away. A price will be paid. The journey from your mind to your hands is shorter than your thinking. Be careful if you think you stand, you just might be sinking. A price will be paid when you give yourself away. People never crumble in a day. Daddies never crumble in a day.
Time.
Families,
Thank you,
education,
Deb.
and the United States
Thank you,
won't
Deb.
crumble in a day.
This ends our public comment time. We will now take, I want to go to agenda item 2.2, written public comment. Submitted written public comments are attached in the electronic meeting agenda for the board and the public to review, and those that handed in documents today with their name cards, they will be also printed off for the board. Thank you. We will now take a 10-minute break. It is 9:58. We will return at 10:08. Agenda item 4. Yesterday, we had a consent agenda item pulled, and we will now address that. Is there a motion on agenda item 4? Patsy?
I move to authorize the Commissioner to amend a contract with the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation, NCFF, to extend staff partnership contracts until December 2024.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Was that Lisa? Okay. So the motion was made by Patsy and seconded by Lisa. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I'd like to be heard.
Jacqueline?
Yes, please. So I requested that this be pulled from the consent agenda. And out of all the things that we've been doing this year, this is one of the things that keeps giving me some heartburn and concern. And I'm a little bit worried about the process. And so I'm speaking to my board members, but I'm also speaking to the commissioner, and maybe there's a different place that we can discuss this. But yesterday, we brought up B2, which was our policy and reference manual about board committees. And if we look at the Budget and Finance Committee, our policy says the Budget and Finance Committee may be directed to advise and make recommendations to the board for possible action in connection with the department budget and finance proposals. And so as we were going through the health standards process and we were all focused on that, a lot of these ESSER funds or expenditures came to us through the consent agenda. And we were voting on them, but I don't ever remember a finance or budget proposal for our ESSER funds going through the Budget and Finance Committee for us to vote on as a board. And if something that is our responsibility as a board is to vote on the department's budget, I would think that voting on how we spend $84 million prior to us voting on pieces and components of it would be something that the Budget and Finance Committee should have seen ahead of time, had the opportunity to weigh on, and had an opportunity to refer that to the full board. And so when I asked about it about 2 meetings ago, we then, after some time, were presented with the presentation of the department's outline and the department's plan. But again, it didn't come to us for our approval or consideration. It came to us as, this is what you've already voted on piece by piece by piece, and all but $10 million of it has been spent, or at least the decision. So as this proposal, again, came to us through the consent agenda, which I think that is inappropriate, but that's another story, because I think in transparency of how we're spending $84 million, things shouldn't be coming to us through the consent agenda. We should be talking about it. We should be discussing it. We should be seeing if this is what we want to do, whether that be the full board or the Budget and Finance Committee. But my understanding was that when we got that presentation, this is how we're spending the funds. But when I looked at this agenda item, it's for us to authorize the commissioner to amend a contract to go until December of 2024, which means we actually haven't contracted for that amount of money, which is not exactly how it was presented to us at the last meeting. And so an additional layer to that is that we were told that the funds had to be expended by December of 2024. However, subsequently, and the other board members may not know it, I got an email that said actually there was an amendment to the law that they actually don't have to be expended until December of 2024. So now there is actually more time that we had or could have had to think about this, consider it, and deliberate on it about how we got these funds out. And it was illuminated to me when I watched an OPS school board meeting, because I saw Dr. Logan present her recommendations for how to spend the money to her board for them to vote on. But we never got that opportunity here. And it really concerns me, again, when we talk about our processes, our procedures, what our committees are supposed to be doing. This is a function of the budget committee. So I'm not certain that I'm asking that we not approve this particular one, but I am wondering if we as a board don't need to consider and ask the question to the department of, should this have come through the Budget and Finance Committee for us to vote on the proposal as it being a budget or a finance proposal from the department? So that is my concern, and I think every time I see one of these come through, I personally would like to see it pulled from the consent agenda, because I think we need to have a larger conversation about what our department priorities are, what our board priorities are or policies, and was this and all of the decisions that were made in line with what we as a board are approving for budgets.
Deborah, then Robin. Deborah?
I wasn't sure what you were going to mention in regard to this, but it's funny that it piggybacks on a conversation I had with another board member this week about our finance committee. And, you know, what is really within our scope of approval, because so much is passed through and mandated, but the question you're asking isn't about what's mandated. I mean, there's some real decision making to those funds. I guess I have always been under the assumption that everything in the consent agenda was being looked at by one committee or another, even if it wasn't in the finance committee. And so maybe that is something that we can discuss as a process that we would want to look at, because I would hope that somebody would have their eye on, or a discussion around everything that's in the consent agenda before it comes here. So that's just my thought. So.
Robin?
Yeah, I'm just seeking clarification. All right. So are you requesting, you're not opposed to the Nebraska Children and Family Foundation. That's not your issue. Is that correct?
If you're asking me if I'm opposed to an organization, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
That's
what I'm asking.
What I'm concerned about is because
that's all I really wanted to know.
I want to make sure that you understand this is germane to the topic, because this is an expenditure of ESSER funds, which is a larger proposal that did not go through the Budget and Finance Committee and voted on by the board. And so I'm wondering if this is appropriate for us to be spending these funds piece by piece if the board has not voted on a larger plan for a proposal for a budget or a finance, or for a budget or finance proposal from the department.
You've been very clear with that. That's not my question. My question was just about the foundation. Then the next thing is, are you making a request, a recommendation, or whatever you want to call it, that this be referred back to the policy finance or to a particular committee so that it will be discussed and then it will be brought forward to us? I guess I'm just wanting to know where this whole thing is headed. I mean, I get your philosophical comments. I just want to hear if there is a recommendation. Maybe there isn't one.
May I respond, Maureen?
Yes.
I guess what I would like to know, and maybe my request would then be for us to table this for me to get an answer, but in our board policies and procedures and the things that we are charged with approving, the things that are in our purview, which one of the things we approve is the budget. Should this expenditure of funds, the entire grouping of how the department was going to spend the funds, should that have gone to the Budget and Finance Committee, which then would have been referred to the board for approval of the plan? Because that process did not happen. And so I need more guidance, whether from board members who've been here longer, whether that's our legal counsel, whether that's our board liaison, our commissioner, someone to tell me why this operated outside of our normal budget process, or what the guiding document that we have that allowed this to do that.
Thank you.
Lisa?
I spent one term on the budget committee, and when the budget came through for us to look over, I read everything in the budget, and it was long, twice, and then had a lot of questions that I came early the next morning to ask a person. I guess I need to know, was this item listed on a form that came to the budget committee and it was there, and maybe you didn't see it? Because you would have the chance to pull that and discuss it in the budget committee. I guess I just need to know, was it in the budget? And if it isn't, does that make sense? I don't know if the commissioner knows that it was in the budget.
Well, budget separate than the ESSER funds, if I can just take it, but in that particular committee, this contract was actually reviewed, and I don't know if February is the right date, that's the date on here, but I believe there would have been that first round of approval from the board. All of the first round contracts are actually reviewed by a committee, and usually now budget and finance committee when they're coming through. This is an amendment to an existing one, hence the reason it's actually on consent without necessarily going back through that. So I'm up for different processes, different things that might be better for your sake, right? But in the midst of making these approvals, you've been approving each one of those contracts as they came through. I think what Jacqueline's consistently asked, and I'm trying to listen to this request about what's the big picture, and should the board act on the big picture of that so we can carry out that particular work.
Well, thank you for clarifying the difference between the ESSER funds and our NDE budget. And so I guess having the request that the budget committee look it over and discuss it in committee might be, better. But I really, knowing this money is actually needed almost right away, I would hate to postpone it another month, but I do think that a discussion in the budget committee would have been probably a good thing.
Jacqueline?
I think a discussion in the, so let's go back a little bit. So I want to make sure that I'm clear. I understand that the ESSER funds and our budget are different funds, okay? I don't think I confuse the two. But if you look at the Budget and Finance Committee, there's two components to that. There's budget and there's finance. And if we don't see ESSERs as part of our regular budget, we have to see it as part of our finances. And so the department brings those proposals of budget and finance proposals to the committee. That's what the committee, one of the things that we do. And so if you're asking about did the pieces of the puzzle go to the committee, can you approve this contract, can you approve that contract? I'm sure they've gone to different committees, yes. But when we look at a budget, we don't say, hey, you committee, can you approve the payroll now? And can you do the approve, our operating costs here and the rent here? We look at a budget. This is a proposal for how to spend the funds. That piece being voted on by us as a board, I don't believe ever happened. That is my concern with us continuing to look at one line, when we never set or agreed to what the overall plan would be. And I think that's a function of the board. And so I get concerned when we say, well, shouldn't you talk about that in the committee? Shouldn't you talk about that? We need to talk about that as a board. And what are we agreeing or believing is our role and our duty as a board when it comes to these types of matters? So sure,
I am all in favor of referring this back to the Budget and Finance Committee, but I think it needs to be a bigger conversation of the Budget and Finance Committee about should we have seen this and don't we need to vote on a bigger picture before we piecemeal this through, which is what's been going on. And I take absolute responsibility for not having said something about this 5 months ago. I should have looked at this, but I think all of us should have. And if it means we have to stop it now to go back and look at it, I think we need to. And this sense of urgency, I want to just kind of address that. If I could finish just a second, Robin.
I'm just getting myself in the queue.
Okay. So I pulled up the ESSER overview of the state allocation of ESSER funds. And I have questions in some of this. Like one of my questions, it says, a state must subgrant not less than 90% of its total. So that leaves me to believe we can keep 10%, okay? Then the next sentence says the ARP ESSER fund includes 3 state-level reservations for activities. And it goes through and says 5% has to do this, 1% has to do this, etc. So then it has me thinking, do we get 10% or do we get 18%? Is that 7.5% or 7.5% that has to be allocated? Is that inclusive of the 10 or is that exclusive of the 10? Huh? And so the fact that I can't readily answer these questions right now because I didn't see the proposal of someone coming to me and saying 5% of the ESSER allocation is for the implementation of evidence-based intervention aimed specifically at addressing learning loss. So I'm like, okay, so which of these priorities in the 5% bucket is this one connected to, so I can make sure that as we saw this, we agreed that we were all, putting this in the 5% bucket, or whatever it is. I don't know the specifics, but we should have looked at it, I believe. And so, because it says, again, let me just read some of this. These funds are to respond to students' academic, social, and emotional needs and address the disproportionate impact of COVID on underrepresented student subgroups. I know we haven't even got the results of those tests yet for this year of what the complete impacts are going to be. And so the fact that we have allocated all but $10 million of those $84 million, and we haven't even completely understood where all of our needs are going to be, I can't get around this idea of we got to hurry up and spend these funds when we don't even know where the need is going to be. People will always create a sense of urgency when they want to do something. But a month or 2 months is not going to change the fact that these kids, our kids, are going to have needs for the next 2 or 3 years, and we got to make sure we get the buckets right. We shouldn't just be saying, oh, we'll give it to this nonprofit or this organization, and you know what? If we realize there's a shift in where the needs are, we'll just ask them to shift it. No, we need to wait and see where the need is. I'm not saying we have to wait on every single thing, but if we find out where the need is, then we can actually find the right organization or the right place to seek that need. The thinking of giving it to them and then telling them to adjust is actually very backward thinking, in my humble opinion. So my recommendation, I know Robin is wanting to speak so badly. I'm glad he's excited about this as much as I am. And so I do think this should go back to the committee, but I think that the entire idea of it should go back to the committee because I don't know that it was proper the way it was done, and that's my concern.
Robin.
I certainly appreciate your comments, and this question, however, is not for you. I see, 1.2 million over 3 years. Are we in any kind of hurry to make sure that this is allocated? That's my only question. In other words, if we send this back, wherever we may send this back to, or if we send it back to any place, do we have to, is there any timeline?
Are you asking the commissioner?
Yes.
So, yes, because, yeah, I'll take this off. Yes, in the sense, and I would have to check with with the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation. The intention is actually investing in people to provide capacity for specific work, right? As we all know, there's quite a workforce shortage. It's hard enough to go find folks. If that created an interruption in that, and I'm not saying it does, I just don't know, that would be my concern with not taking action on it today. I don't disagree with coming back to the Budget and Finance Committee and looking at the holistic picture, if that would be a more appropriate way for the board to feel comfortable with the package of information that's being presented.
Patty?
I guess sitting listening to this conversation, what I see is not that something is proper or improper, but it's more a matter of whether we decided to use a bottom-up approach, meaning individual items, or a top-down, meaning looking at the broad picture before. So I just want to clarify that. I think it's a matter of what preference we as a board have, as opposed to identifying something as being improper. I think that's an important clarification. Would I feel more comfortable with us going back and really looking at where we are now and what the big picture is? Yes, I think that's an appropriate step for the Budget Finance Committee. I don't know what that means in terms of a renewal, right? I mean, we've got all these pieces. I don't think we're in the position that we want to say, we're going to stall all of these things that are renewals as opposed to new money that's left. Another comment I think that's important to make is we do know some of the impacts that COVID has had on our students. We have some of that information. Is it a complete picture? No, but decisions are being made about how to spend ESSER dollars in part based on what we know will benefit all students in Nebraska. So I think we need to have that clarification as well.
Lisa?
I appreciate this conversation, the start of it, and going back to the Budget Committee, I don't have a problem with that. I just need clarification from the Commissioner. When you talk about the 10%, 7%, 1%, I thought it was just 10% that we could set aside. So if you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's the 10% set aside, and I was completely tracking with what source Jacqueline was using to describe that, but there are expectations within that 10% on how it would be spent.
Jacqueline?
So I just want to respond to Patty and say, I actually think this is consistent with some of the things you promote or tell me, in that, do we really, when we talk about that top-down going up approach versus that up-top going down approach, I think we have talked about, do we want to be involved in the day-to-day decisions, or do we need to be involved in the big picture? And so I see this as, when it comes to us as each individual contract, that's day-to-day more so. Well, big picture is if we decide or vote on, so it's part of our processes in voting on contracts, yes, but big picture would be us being able to look at the entire plan, or at least how we allocated things, big picture. So I don't think, I actually think what I'm asking right now is more consistent with what we've been talking about as a board and how we look at big picture things and how it lines up with our priorities and policies.
Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree with the consistency, This process, I think, started before we were having some of those conversations about who we want to be. So I think there's that consideration. I think you have the situation where we have more money than we've ever had. I would like to have been in a position that an entire plan could have been developed ahead of time with all of the pieces in line, but things are happening so quickly, and really a December 24 deadline, that's not that far away when you consider all of the types of sophisticated services that we need to get put in place in order for these to really be helpful with the time frame that exists. I'm not saying that's a sense of urgency necessarily, it's a fact of the reality of how complicated some of this work really is. And even starting with identifying people who can do the work, right? That takes time. Every step takes time. I don't believe that looking at line items means it's day-to-day. Right, that's not really day-to-day. That's just a matter of approach and how you're looking at everything, or are you looking at individual pieces? So that would be my response there.
Lisa.
I guess I need more clarification. What I thought in our committee, Teaching and Learning, COVID, it's almost 2 years we've been dealing with this. It seems like at one of our recent meetings, Jeremy Henninger looked at assessments from 2020. So when you mentioned we might not have data, I don't know, do we have the data to look at for needs?
I thought that was in my building. You weren't supposed to speak
Okay.
There will be data releases coming actually next week,
okay.
right? And so we know some of that. And I think to the point of what the impacts are and how these funds have to make us prospective about what's going to happen. And I actually just appreciate the conversation too. That entry point for a conversation for the board about what the big picture is that matches with the line item is important to you. It's important to me as well. So we do need to spend time. I like the approach of looking at that big picture in the Budget and Finance Committee, bringing that out so you feel comfortable with the big picture, because if you're not yet comfortable with that, I know Jacqueline will keep asking this question, and that's her right and responsibility to do that. What I want is to make sure that we can ensure that if the proper place to maybe look over all of the ESSER expenditures is Budget and Finance Committee. Sometimes we piecemeal things out because we have a lot of committees that want to be involved in a lot of different things. If I put it all in this committee, others might be, well, we're interested in this, we're interested in that. If you would all kind of agree, hey, Budget and Finance Committee, take a kind of an overview of where we're at on this. It's a great time to do that. Let's look, let's make sure that we can get that in place. There's one thing that lingers with me about sense of urgency. There are some requirements for, and I don't have all the details, that we actually have to have these dollars committed within a year of a particular time when they come through. Doesn't mean spent, right? Doesn't mean completely expended, but encumbered in some fashion. Our plans have to go on the federal fund side, have to also meet all the requirements that they have from the U.S. Department of Ed. So they ask us questions, this is what we're doing. So we submitted a plan, right, for U.S. Department of Ed. That's also a very fluid process. Our schools have that very same fluid process in having to expend their funds. We're watching the legislature have to go through a fluid process right now as well on that side. So it is a unique moment in time, but I like the idea of putting kind of that big picture in front of that committee. So.
Thank you for the clarification, Commissioner.
Patsy, then Deborah. Microphone.
Having these come through piece by piece by piece doesn't help me as an elected official. And that's where I'm going to come to this from, the point that I'm going to enter, and that is, if I could see the big picture and I knew that a certain percentage was spent on this, a certain percentage was spent on this, and this, then when somebody asks me a question about how have you decided to spend these ESSER funds, which my constituents are asking me. And I can't say that. I can say, well, we spent this much on this proposal this month that went through. And I think that we would, in looking at the big picture, be able to say to the whole board and staff and leadership that they're asking questions about how much of this are we spending on teachers and helping them make it through. And how much are we spending? Is this going for a football field? You know, that kind of question. I certainly think the big picture is something that we should have, and I have not ever understood why we didn't. So,
Patty? Oh, no,
Just-
wait.
Oh, go ahead. Deborah, you are.
Deborah, I'm sorry. Then Patty.
Thank you. Commissioner, I have a question about when you said that the funds were required to have them committed by a certain time. I'm curious, does that mean that we just have to set the intention? Like we want to say, you know, this much is for mental health, or do we have to actually have contracts in place?
Yeah, and I don't know that I'm going to speak exactly right, so we'll have to confirm with our staff. But my understanding of it is that you would have to have them encumbered through some type of contract to make sure that that's in place. There are maybe different requirements for some of the other funds as well. So we've also, as we've worked with just our regular federal funds, right? I mean, those have a certain requirement, and we have to keep running that federal funds program too. And schools are in this as well. As they submit things to us, we're having to watch on that particular front. But they have different requirements on how they have to be expended. And again, that's probably a great conversation we could have with, you know, ensuring that I'm giving you the proper information. So,
Patty, then Robin, then Jacqueline.
I'm responding, Patsy, to your comment. I agree with you completely, and I think as we look at the big picture, what would be most helpful to us as board members is to have categories, right? Categories, and then what are the specific things under each of those categories?
I agree with you.
Robin, I think you were next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm not sure I heard this correctly, but I think I heard the commissioner say, and maybe it was Jacqueline, I can't remember, but I have full trust, and I'm not a member of the Finance and Budget Committee, so I can say this. I have full trust in those members, and I have full trust in the people within the department as they go through this entire process. I really want to emphasize that I would have no problem. And I'm not a member of this committee, the Budget and Finance Committee, but I have full trust in the people. And so if that's the decision that is made, that all of these ESSER funds go through that particular area, I just want to go on record that I trust those people and I trust the NDE.
Jacqueline, then Deborah.
So I want to respond to Deborah. I had this document up, and so this one that we're being asked to approve or extend, the document that we have specifically refers to it being through ESSER 3 or ARP. And so if you look at the ARP Act, it says available for obligation by SEAs and subrecipients through September 30th of 2023. And so that's about 2 years. So for CARES Act, we had through September 30th of 2021. Through ESSER 2, we had through September 30th of 2022, and then through ARP, September 30th of 2023 for that obligation. So this is the document that was provided to us from the commissioner, so I'm just reading to that, and if it's not correct, then we have to check the source. But so I wanted to answer that. But I guess, Robin, just to respond, I think the Budget and Finance Committee is a place to start, but I think the board is the place that we finish. And so it's presented to our committee, we review it, discuss it, and then eventually bring it to the board for the board to vote so that everybody can have a voice and be understood. So that is what I was hoping for, at least the process I saw playing out. In terms of the categories, I think that's important. And again, just to illuminate people about some of the things, you know, I went to a teacher certification workshop at the board retreat, or not board retreat, board conference a couple weeks ago. And there I found out that we were adding people to our certification staff because I don't know if we had a backlog or not enough people, but some of the use for our ESSER funds were to staff up our NDE to be able to reissue in the new certification system and to be able to get teachers certified in a faster manner. And one of the questions that came from the audience was, well, what are you guys going to do when the ESSER funds run out? And so to me, I'm thinking, yeah, that's an expense for the teacher pipeline, but that's also a department problem that we had prior to COVID. And so it felt like, okay, great, I'm glad we can solve a problem, but that's more of a long-term problem rather than how do we fix things with ESSER. So it was, my point is, I found that out by attending a conference rather than knowing the answers to those questions from the board. And so I'd like for us to just have some more information. And I think we're at a good place, or I hope we're at a good place that people, I'd like to make a motion now that we refer this back to the committee. I guess Deb had it now.
There's a motion on, I'm just going to double check. There's a motion on the floor right now, so I don't know if we'll get our.
There's point of order.
She's made a motion, so maybe we have to resolve this before further. I would wait to speak until we resolve, because if she's making a motion, I need to make sure it's proper.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, she withdraws motion, so.
You withdraw the motion.
I wasn't going to second the motion.
Oh.
So there's a main motion on the floor. A motion to refer to a committee can be made, requires a second, it's amendable, debatable, and requires a majority vote.
Okay,
And it needs to be specific as to what committee is being referred to in the motion.
so you can't, Jacqueline, did you hear that? Okay, if you wanted to, you still could, I guess.
I'll wait till.
She withdrew the motion, so you can continue with,
So I want to thank you, Jacqueline, for this discussion, and thank all my fellow board members. In the meetings we've had in the last 24 hours and our discussions have been very exciting to me, because we are starting to see that we have been doing a lot of business in default mode, and we haven't been asking about the processes, and now we are, and I think that's an important step forward. And you know, I want our parents to know that we are listening and we are realizing that some of our work has been done in default, and this is an example of one of those important processes that we should be reviewing. And I want to just respond and agree with Robin that I 100% have trust in all of my board members and the work in the finance committee, but that doesn't mean that we put 100% responsibility and information there. And over the last year, I feel, even if I'm not in that committee, a responsibility to be able to answer questions to my constituents and to anyone that communicates with me and wants answers. And what I've been saying for the last year is, when I don't have the answers, like I haven't for a long time about a lot of things, then that's when it looks like we're losing trust, because I can't answer it because I don't know the answers, because one committee is holding that information. And and then there's the other side of that, I have brought this up a couple times, and it's still an issue that's not resolved in my head, but when a constituent group came to me about some money that was allocated, and there were some issues, and a whole sector of people were telling me there were issues, and then when I asked questions about that money that we approved, then it becomes a question of, am I stepping into areas that are day-to-day when it's a funding question that I should be able to answer those, and that shouldn't be a day-to-day. And so I do think we need more discussion about these expenditures, and they always need to include the big picture as we discuss each and every one of these individual applications. So I'm grateful that we are talking about some new processes. So thank you to all of you.
Patsy?
Yes, I think it's a matter of checks and balances. That's what it is. And so being able to see the big picture so that and to be knowledgeable enough of it to speak to our constituents is important. And to read the consent agenda, and if you have questions, pull it and bring it forward, just as Jacqueline has done. I think that's great. And we've discussed that, and I certainly think we've made our point that we want to know about the big picture so that we can discuss it with the people that we represent. So I'd like to call the question, if that's possible, the motion that I made.
So the motion on the floor is to authorize the commissioner to amend a contract with the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation to extend staff.
Ask if there's any further debate on the original motion.
Okay, I apologize. Is there any further debate on the motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that this item,
Because we have a motion now on the, I guess she called the
You can amend
question.
it.
So she called the question.
Yeah.
Patsy called the question, so you need to ask if there's a second.
I don't know what
If
you,
there's no second,
I didn't know what you were doing.
then it goes back to debate and another motion is made. So ask, say the question has been called.
Okay, the question has been called. Is there a second?
Now, nobody seconded if you don't want it.
Is there any further discussion?
Is there any further discussion?
at this time, I'd like to make a motion to refer this matter back to the Budget and, to the Budget and Finance Committee.
So you're amending the motion then?
No, it's a secondary motion.
Jacqueline, would you please qualify when that committee is to report back?
Yes. I move to refer this matter. I move to refer this matter to the Budget and Finance Committee to report back on this matter at the January board meeting.
I guess, oh, there's not a, I'll second. I will second.
Okay, moved by Jacqueline and seconded by Patty. Discussion, right? Discussion?
Yes.
Robin?
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure that we are under no time constraints by sending this back.
Commissioner? Actually, that's my same question, Commissioner.
For these children.
Yeah, my understanding is that the people that would be involved in this, we have them, they would be under contract currently. I don't think there's a time crunch if we could resolve that by January, so.
Thank you.
Patty?
Yeah, I need clarification with what the motion really is, what this matter means. Does it mean we are addressing only this particular item that was pulled off the consent agenda? Or are we talking about reviewing the big picture? Those may be separate things, but I just need clarification so I know what the expectation is.
Jacqueline?
I don't think that on this particular matter, we can reference what the committee has to do big picture. I think we can only discuss this particular item. I think it can be done in conjunction, and maybe that could be something that the committee decides to take, but I don't think it would be proper on this motion or this action item to direct the committee outside of this particular proposal, in my opinion.
Further discussion? Seeing none.
Call the roll.
Andrea, call the roll on the amendment?
No, on the motion.
On the motion. On the motion to refer. I'm sorry.
Morrison,
Yes.
Fricke,
Yes.
Nichols,
No.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Kojons,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
6 yes, 1 no, 1 vacant.
Motion passes.
This matter has been referred to the Budget and Finance.
This matter now has been referred to the Budget and Finance Committee for next month.
And it's time to adjourn.
Agenda item 5, adjournment. Thank you for those who attended in person and who tuned in to the broadcast. As needed, a work session will be held on Thursday, January 6th, 2022 in Lincoln, Nebraska. A business meeting will be held on Friday, January 7th, 2022 at 9:00 a.m. in Lincoln, Nebraska. The December 3rd, 2021 State Board meeting is adjourned.